All right. Once again, starting late. This case, it was Karen. We finally got a set of headphones, or she finally got a set of headphones that work with her laptop, but apparently Google Chrome decided to just not want to work with those headphones or something. I don't know. They worked on Skype. They worked on Skype. And yes, we probably should have tested them on Google Plus as well, but we didn't. And now there is a freaking, oh God, what's going on now? What the heck? Are you guys hearing this, or is it just me?
I'm hearing you.
No, but are you hearing the epic music?
No.
I can very slightly hear the epic music. From
Where
here
the
it sounds
hell is that?
delightful. For you, it's probably annoying as shit. I would imagine you've triggered one of BuzzFeed's 10 billion adverts because they gotta make them shekels somehow.
Oh my God. All right. Well, at least we're in a semblance of order. Um, they say that, plans don't survive contact with the enemy, and ours didn't.
The enemy is Chrome,
It
I think.
is Crumb. Crumb Inc.
Well,
What the fuck? What's Crumb Inc?
well, I think, I don't know. I don't know why my headphones worked on, like I could hear everything you guys were saying. My mic wouldn't work on my headphones, and the whole thing was just a freaking,
Yes, frustration. All right, let's should we just get started with this?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, okay. We'll just get started. I mean, because I got everything set up perfectly, so it should be just a matter of making sure that I'm presenting to everyone, enlarging the video, and commencing. So if you guys want me to stop at any point prior to the 20-second mark, then I shall do so. In which case I shall just proceed with stopping every 20 seconds to avoid the copyright that BuzzFeed will slap on us. So I apologize to everyone who's viewing this and wondering why we're stopping every 20 seconds. That's why. Because BuzzFeed will take our video down if we do it for too long. So let's begin.
I can explain why 70% to the dollar is not a fully accurate description of the gender wage gap.
It's not a trick question.
Right, I get it. Okay.
Do you? What is it?
Okay, wait. Okay.
We got 8 seconds in, folks. That
Yes.
might be a record, actually.
This is the thing that confused me. Absolutely, because how much of a feminist are you? And he's like, this is a quiz they're taking, and he's like, I can explain how the 78 cents on the dollar figure is not an accurate reflection of the actual wage gap. How has that ever been,
I think they're going for more, Karen, or they're adding in the cost of feminine premium on items of a nature that are necessary.
All right, because I'm just wondering if maybe are they hijacking the whole thing? After having all of the statistical analysis thrown in their face for 30 fucking years, and it has been that long because that's when Thomas Sowell discovered that women pretty much earn the same as men, right? All other things held constant. So I don't know whether they're trying to appropriate this and saying, oh, it was feminism that discovered this, right? Or what? I don't really quite get what this is all about. But maybe you're right. I'm not cynical enough to have come to that assumption on my own, but you could be right.
No, I mean, there's several options here. One, they are trying to appropriate, or they're trying to, they realize that the rotten tree that is the wage gap is eventually going to come down on their heads.
And they're going to say, well, we were saying this all along.
Yeah, they're either going to do this to preserve the infallible, I was going to say phallus, but I think I mean facade. The infallible facade that is feminism.
I don't know, according to feminism, the phallus is pretty infallible.
Yeah, that's true, it rules all. But also is bad. The penis is bad. The gun is also bad, but definitely the penis is bad because it shoots seeds and seeds create. Okay, all right. But no, there's two options here. One, they're preemptively assuming or taking on this criticism so that they can preserve the infallible facade of feminism, or two, what they're talking about is that the 78 cents on the dollar is even worse, even more terrible when you include everything. Or it doesn't also include the spending, what they're calling the spending gap, which is how much women have to be additional they have to pay for premium items marketed just to them. Because, you know, the fact that they also have access to the unisex items as well as the premium items is irrelevant. It's just that they have to pay more for premium items that cater to their femininity. Sort of like the aristocratic spending gap in which aristocrats had to pay more for items geared towards their particular identity.
I know. Why should wealthy people have to pay more for silk than peasants have to pay for cotton, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So I think those are the two options. And
I am now going to show how much of a feminist I am, because I think I actually know where they're going with this. I mean, I do hedge a little bit on the cynical side that they might be finally willing to admit that the 77 cents or 78 cents to a man's dollar is nonsense because of all of the variables. But if they did that, then they'd have to say something along the lines of, some women in some fields might earn between 78 cents, might earn between 99 to 95 cents to men's dollars on average, and that variable is for a reason that is currently unaccounted for, and it's too much of a mouthful for them to actually say something honest like that. So I think what they're getting at here, because we know this is the feminism, and we know this is the BuzzFeed feminism, and they do enjoy their intersectionality a little bit. I think what they're actually referring to is the fact that the 77 cents or the 78 cents to a man's dollar is the white feminist figure. It's not the Latino and black women. Because remember, they like to do the Latino women is 50, black women is 60, white women is 70, and Asian women is like 80.
We are not worthy.
Yeah. Or it could be a brief introduction into how women are socialized towards lower paying careers due to oppressive gender norms in society, or that women's work is traditionally undervalued. So even when you have a man and a woman, you know, scrubbing the same toilets or making the same sandwiches or waiting the same tables, what you have is they're earning less than they should be because it's considered women's work and therefore it's less well remunerated. So I mean, there's a whole lot of options here.
Yeah, there are. And I just to put it out there, I'm sort of, because I know people are like, well, why don't you just watch it? Well, because we're like it's almost like we're zoologists in the field, or zoologists. Is it zoologists or anthropologists? Well, maybe not. Anthropologists. Let's go for anthropologists. You can just imagine, we're in the bushes in our khakis with some what are those things called? That magnify the binoculars. Yes, we're in the bushes in our khakis. A teal deer and a couple of badgers in the bushes with our khakis, watching through binoculars. The hairless apes as they go about their business and writing notes and we're conjecturizing on our theories to their behavior.
Yes, we're putting conjectures in our ecological journal.
Yes.
Predictions as to, what are they going to do next, and based on what their motivations are, we can infer. And you can't really.
You have to test the theory. You have to test the theory.
You can't really understand animal behavior in terms of what's motivating it unless you actually sort of, you have to ask, what's that animal going to do next, right? What's that animal going to do next? And sort of, if they do this next, then this is maybe their motivation. If they do this next, then this is maybe their motivation, right?
Yeah, but we also have, we each, all three of us, have our own theories on what ultimately the proximal drivers of these hairless apes' behavior, and you put them down, you observe the behavior, and you see which theory most approximates, based on the theory, you predict the behavior and you see which theory was right. It's basically sort of a betting pool.
Technically, that you're talking about hypotheses, not theories.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. My apologies. Hypotheses. So we've set down our hypotheses, and we're going to see which hypotheses bear fruit in terms of being closest to the observed behavior of these hairless apes. So let's continue.
All right.
It'll test me now. God. I feel like the word feminist is like a hot word. I don't think it's like a word that I think of and I'm like, oh, pleasantness.
It's about.
I know. I like this guy already, so you just know that he's like doomed. In my ad, I was just like, Jared, get out of there now.
Yeah, you can see the rest of the rest of the group is going to be circling him shortly and biting off some digits.
Well, they'll even if they don't like respond aggressively or angrily, they are going to try and pull him into their way of thinking.
Yeah,
and I
definitely.
assume that, I mean, whether this is people actually genuinely expressing their own thoughts or whether this is a scripted video, I'm assuming that Jared's going to come around and drink the Kool-Aid by the end. So.
Of course. Well, we can't have. I mean, this is erratic behavior in the group, so it has to be dealt with and made to conform with the overall, I guess, established group norms, as it were. So.
Well, and you can sort of tell by the next bit, right? They juxtaposed him, right, and what he said, which is like, I'm not really comfortable with it or whatever. It's just not really my thing. With this next clip where she says, you know, feminism is just about equality between the sexes, and the guy says, yeah, it's just about making sure there's an even playing field, and you know, acknowledging that we don't have that yet, or something like that, right? And so, I mean, like they're giving the most benign dictionary definition here coming up. The absolute sweet sunshine lollipops, you know, unicorn farts definition.
But it's in their sacred text. It's in their sacred book. So
yes.
You know it has to be true.
Well, God loves you even if He gives you cancer, right? So.
Yeah. But Teal'c, did you have anything to add to this? I mean, me and Karen are prophesizing either a pressure applied to that young man with the hat to conform, or that he will be ostracized in some manner. So, what are your thoughts on?
It seems likely that that's going to happen. I mean, I've not actually watched this video the whole way through, but I do think he will. He's kind of like. What's the actual name? I don't suppose either of you know this. Like for someone who is like actually planted, I think it is just a plant.
Devil's advocate?
No. He's the person
Shill?
that you're supposed to identify with as the audience, because you're supposed to be like on the fence.
Yeah.
Like he's the believable character because out of all of them, he's the generic whatever kind of male that
cripple in
matches
the
the rest of the
wheelchair who's
population.
not actually crippled, that they wheel up onto the stage at the Peter Popoff like evangelical healing sessions and then can walk again, right?
Yeah.
That's what this guy is, I think. So he's sort of the unconvinced person. He will be convinced by the end, and I'm pretty sure that almost everything that they will present him with, it will not be with anger. It won't be with like aggressive pressure. It will be essentially, but here's flowers and sunshine and wonderful things and everything that's right with the universe and all of this beautifulness, right? And that's all that feminism is, and then he'll learn his lesson by the end. Oh, I guess that is what feminism is, right?
So essentially what we're seeing is sort of a primitive conversion ritual.
Yeah, someone in the chat has suggested the term might be an audience surrogate, which sounds
audience
like a likely
surrogate
term.
Actually,
okay, audience surrogate. So essentially, what we're witnessing here, as the naked apes congregate in the bush, is a primitive conversion ceremony in which they symbolically convert the disbeliever into their mythos.
I do want to say that this was my prediction, that he will come around to their way of thinking. when they present him with all the wonderfulness that is feminism without yelling at him even once. But I could be wrong. I mean, like, maybe this will actually be a thoughtful,
We can always
nuanced
hope.
thing.
I mean, we're always out here in the bush looking at the naked apes, hoping for some sign of intelligence. But, or not necessarily intelligence, because this is very clever, very, very sophisticated kind of behavior. However, more like self-awareness, perhaps.
You keep saying naked ape at the most politically incorrect time when, given what's on the screen. What
do you think? White people are less naked than black people?
And less apes. I know. But somebody's gonna call us out on the racism for freezing the screen and
Okay, I'll use the term naked ape on some white people. How's that?
All right.
About the equality of both genders.
Being aware that it isn't an equal playing field and advocating for that.
Feminism.
It isn't an equal playing field. Also, who decides? Like this is fundamentally what's interesting. Is there's a magic here. There's an primitive incantation of supernatural belief. Because you don't actually have to know. You don't have to look at the playing field and actually do some measurements, get out your plumb bobs and your squares and whatever, and do some measurements on the playing field. You just know by way of supernatural, divine something or other that the playing field is always slanted. It's always slanted towards women. Women have to trudge up the playing field both ways, ladies, right? According to feminism, women have to be playing uphill both ways, regardless of where they are on the playing field. They're always playing uphill, and we just have to accept this belief as unassailable.
This woman creeps me out. I'm just letting everybody know in advance.
Yeah, she just sort of get that feeling, like as a naked ape, she gives you that feeling of that she's gonna just come at you like a fucking spider monkey.
I am going to actually make a point about not only her, but some of the other ones a little bit later. There's a common thing that sort of ties a few of them together, and I suppose it's their preponderance for virtue signaling, but we'll get onto that at the time.
This is my lifeblood. Yeah, I even wore my shirt today.
I feel like I'm not...
What? That's a little...
Feminism is her lifeblood. Her lifeblood.
Okay, blood of Christ, that sort of thing. Is that it?
Well, I mean that says quite a lot about, in some ways, a lot of these professional feminists that we're seeing now. For some of them, especially these ones in their sort of late teens and early 20s, it actually is their life. Like, these are people who have actually gone through university, gone through gender studies or women's studies courses, and are doing feminism for a living. So it's not actually an exaggeration. It really is their life, which is kind of a worrying thing when you think about it, because it's like, yes, I do this really specialized part of sociology which strips sociology of what little scientific merit it had, keeping in mind that about 75 to 90% of its studies can never actually be replicated or get the same results twice, which is really bad. But gender studies throws that out of the window and basically says, here's some patterns, and we're going to use some inductive logic to kind of just give you a just-so story about women being oppressed and men hating them forever, even though in a sexually dimorphic species like humans, where males are larger than females, that actually speaks for a certain pattern of mate selection, which has to be brought about by women. But they'll ignore that, because that requires them to know something about biology and evolution and science.
Well, yeah, and in any sexually dimorphic species, the females are going to be treated, at least in terms of physical violence, much more gently than the males are. It's like survivability in a sexually dimorphic species definitely favors females over males.
Just a question. So the guy on the right,
that's
he's
Jared.
The one.
That's
Jared. So this is the one we need to pay attention to see how the others behave towards him.
Yes.
Okay.
Just
So,
read up on
I was going to say, before we go anywhere, I want to now talk about the virtue signaling that we've got going on here. Feminism is my lifeblood woman has her feminist T-shirt on because feminism is her thing. Now, what I want to point out here, and this might sound very convoluted and me overthinking it, but if our prediction turns out to be correct and Jared here turns his life around, you're going to see why I'm reading into this as much as I am. The first gentleman that we saw, I don't know if anyone noticed, he had a Black Pride T-shirt on. It was a T-shirt that's got the word Pride on it and the big fist. Typical Black Power sign, right? So that is very much a, Black Lives Matter, my black racial pride, my in-group virtue signal. Feminism on the T-shirt, my in-group virtue signal. This is important. Okay. The other woman, not the Asian woman, the one beforehand, her T-shirt has the word dork written on it. Now, to me, this is important. We know that hipstering at the moment is the in thing. The in thing is the geek chic. The in thing is pretending like you're a geek or a nerd when you're actually not because you don't really have any particular interest in it, or the only interest you have in it is the stuff that became really popular, like, I like comic books when the Marvel movies came out. I really like Doctor Who when the entire franchise was rebooted a few years ago. Or, I love Harry Potter full stop because you're an illiterate moron. So that's all kind of our little niche cultures, and they think they're all counterculture movements because this is the feminist, like, Marxist language and terminology that we keep hearing. They are the oppressed minorities. They are counterculturing the supremacist white capitalist patriarchy, which is the bourgeoisie class, and they are the proletariat class. This is what we constantly hear from them. Jared, our man here, has his Poseidon shirt on, Greco-Roman god. If he now therefore renounces his position and joins the feminist side, he is also distancing himself from the white culture that is represented by his attire. Maybe I'm overreading this, but I find that interesting.
Yeah,
Oh, I also noticed that he's basically dressed like a dude, bro.
Yeah, he is. He's dressed like a dude.
White guy. He's the one who said, feminism feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, he's the white guy. He's got the dude bro cap. He's got a shirt that represents patriarchal historical values and stuff like that, and civilizations and all of that. So, I mean, there might be something to this, Teal dear. It might be sort of subtle messaging.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be surprised considering they probably went through a lot of storyboards and dressing before this. Our totally ad hoc, completely amateurish bullshit, that's not faked. We don't go through like storyboards. Oh yeah, Karen will tell Alison what a bucking bitch she is. 3 minutes and 45 seconds. We don't plan any of our this. They do. They plan everything. Yeah. Everything. They've planned every shirt. They most likely planned all of the facial expressions based on takes. They've planned every word. Every part of this is planned and polished. Even the stuff that looks like it isn't, it is planned. So this is something that's manufactured for a specific purpose. So let's
I just want to actually say, some people in the chat are suggesting that the Pride shirt is actually a UFC thing. Even if that is the case, I find it very interesting that out of all the UFC lines of clothing that they choose the one with the logo and the slogan, which just so happens to coincide with that of another movement.
Okay.
It's just very coincidental that's the one that they would pick.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe we are reading too much into this. I don't know.
I'm completely open to the idea that I am. It's just something which I've noticed and put together just for funsies.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's see if any of our predictions bear fruit.
Super read up on like what a feminist is.
I feel like it's one of those.
Wait. What did she actually make a statement? Was there something there that I missed here? Let me just see if there's. I don't want to do you're crazy spider monkey woman. I don't want. There we go.
I feel like I'm not super read up on like what a feminist like is.
I feel like it's one of those terms that's
Okay, all right. So she says she's not super read up on what a feminist is. So they've paired the two, the one who says that feminism feels emotionally uncomfortable and the one that says they don't know what a feminist actually is. Like they don't. Like they're not paid act. Anyway.
Yeah.
been hijacked. It's become such a trigger word that people think that it's dirty and that it's bad.
I like situate them with people.
Hijacked would suggest that the people hijacking the term are making it bad. I don't think that's what you're saying. But you're saying, well, if a term gets hijacked, let's say a ship gets hijacked by pirates and then ends up going back to its home port and firing on it, it's still the ship doing it. You know, it's still like you still have to address the fact that pirates somehow got on that ship and won it and take it back from them. How if you're going to use the term hijack and say no, well, that's not really what feminism is, then what's your plan to reclaim feminism? What's your plan to reclaim the ship back?
No, I think what she's saying is that it's just the word that's been hijacked. The word's been, like essentially, I think what she's saying is that there has been so much, I guess, propaganda regarding the word by
okay.
enemies that the word itself has become. Feminism is still all sunshine and lollipops. It's just that people. They've been led to believe that it's bad because the word has now been associated with badness out in the mainstream by people like Rush Limbaugh and Milo Yiannopoulos and
Okay.
you and me and Killdeer. So
what I'm saying, so Karen, so what you're saying is that feminism can never be wrong because if these people will never acknowledge that feminism could have gone wrong and could be responsible for bad things, then you've essentially got a term that nobody can question.
Oh yeah, no, but we know that. We know that. Because the moment that Naomi Wolf opened her mouth and said, "Well, there are a million feminisms, right? And every woman's feminism is different." And I'm like, okay, so essentially what you're saying is that because there are no core beliefs, right? Or other than maybe the dictionary, which people like Onision like to cite over and over again while swearing and yelling, because there are no two feminisms that are the same, because they're individuated to every woman, okay? To each woman has her own feminism, her own personal Jesus, okay? You can't criticize the Bible. You can't criticize the religion. You can't criticize the church, because every single Christian has their own personal Jesus, their own personal conception of Jesus and their own personal relationship with Jesus, right? And they have their own morality. They have their own personality. They have
Some Christians are atheists. Some Christians are Muslims. Some Christians are Sikhs or Hindus.
I know. Some believe in the Norse gods, right? And you don't have to actually believe in Christ to be a practicing Christian, right? Because we don't. So, or the Ten Commandments, or the Golden Rule, or any of that.
There's nothing. There's no beliefs that separate a Christian believer from a non-believer, and we're just using Christianity as an example because Christians don't actually do this.
Yeah, no, they don't. They don't, and it's so essentially. Well, I mean, a lot of Christians are pick and choosers. A lot of.
But the thing is that they don't say that there are no beliefs that differentiate a non-Christian from a Christian. There are.
The main one being that Christ is the Son of God and He died for our sins. Oh my goodness, that is the one. And however you interpret the contradictions in the Bible, whether you're an eye for an eye kind of person or a turn the other cheek person or whatever, right? No matter how you interpret them, there is still that core belief. Now, feminists want to funnel every single inquiry into what the core belief, that particular core belief of feminism is, to the dictionary definition of feminism, that it is a movement for equality between the sexes. That is it. That is all. Anything else is not actually necessarily part of feminism. So the bad behavior of any feminist, right, can be written off as, well, I don't think that's equality, and that isn't my feminism, so therefore I have nothing to do with that, right? And feminism has nothing to do with that. So I mean, like they are trying desperately to, through these tactics, with the Mott and Bailey tactics, to render feminism completely immune to any kind of, it's like slippery as fuck. It is like sword fighting.
Well, the thing is that what I found is when I say that, okay, when I talk to a feminist and I say, okay, you do have a belief structure. I don't believe that women are oppressed or were ever oppressed or are oppressed anywhere. Can I be a feminist? And then variably, or I even go further and say, do you believe that women are oppressed? Do you believe that women are oppressed in our society? And I'll narrow it down so it's less controversial. Do you believe that women are oppressed in the modern day era in the society that you have the most knowledge of? And they will not answer that. And because I've previously said that a belief that women are oppressed is foundational to feminist theory, or to being part of feminist in good standing. If you don't have that belief, you cannot be a feminist in good standing.
Yeah.
You will be ejected from the movement.
Even if you openly say, like lots of people, Christina Hoff Sommers has said this a few times, right? You know, of course women were oppressed, but they aren't anymore in the West. You know, even if you say, yeah, I believe that in the past women were oppressed, or I believe that in other parts of the world women are oppressed, because they're women. You're still, if you say that women are not oppressed here and now, you cannot be a feminist.
Yep, and I've gotten them on this. I've said, well, there are beliefs that all feminists hold to, the belief that women are oppressed relative to men, or by men relative to men, or society is made for men's benefit. And then I will ask them, after I point that out, I'll ask them, do you believe this? Invariably, they can't answer that question. Karen has seen me, the endless threads that I've gotten into asking that one question over and over again. And a feminist will do everything in their power not to answer.
Yeah, they don't want to give, they never want to give you a straight answer. They'll refer you to the dictionary, they'll say Google it, they'll say it's not my job to educate you, they'll weasel their way around it, they will do anything rather than just come out and state what premise their ideology is based on. And their ideology is not based on equality, it is based on patriarchy, male privilege theory, the oppression of women to men's express benefit, right? All of those things. Those are the foundational concepts of feminism as I see them, not in terms of coffee shop feminists who, you know, oh, equality, that sounds good, I guess I'm a feminist, right? They're going to try and convince this guy that that's all it is.
Okay, the feminists that I've talked to, I've actually asked that question. Do you believe that women are oppressed in this day and age? They will not say yes or no when I've established that that is a foundational part of feminism. What they seem to want to do with all of this, with what they're doing with this, is they seem to want to be able to ostracize people based on this belief without actually taking responsibility for believing it. And I'm not exactly sure why. I'm going to throw it out to the audience. Why do they do this? Why do they have this belief, but they don't want to take responsibility for it? They want to continually say, no, feminism is really about the dictionary definition, and not recognize that there's much more to it. There's a belief that men oppress women, that women are victims of men. There's a belief there. And the other thing that occurred to me a while back is that I think there are a lot of feminists who aren't interested in the equality aspect of feminism, but being able to frame women as victims of inequality. That seems to be the bulk of the movement. They don't give a shit about equality. They give a shit about being able to frame women as victims of inequality. That's what they care about.
Yeah.
Anyway, Tilde, I think you were trying to speak up.
I was quite contently listening, but I feel like I might have an answer to that question. I don't think that they want to ever pin down any particular thing, and I've noticed this because I've tried chatting with some feminists about this, and they're very, very evasive. Like, you can make points, and in their response, they will just completely ignore entire paragraphs of whatever you've said to them. Even if they're just questions, they just will not answer them, because if they do that, they have to take a stance definitively. In taking a definitive stance, that means they can be proven wrong. which means they would then have to address the fact that they have been shown to be demonstrably wrong. And if they were ever in that situation where they had to take a definitive stance on something, that means there could come a time when that goal is achieved. And once that goal is achieved, they don't need to exist anymore. And feminism is my lifeblood.
Yeah.
Well, I would agree.
Protest.
I think
Okay.
I think other than the fact that Jared seems to have some dirt on his upper lip, I think that essentially you're trying to project your future. Like there is that sort of sunken cost fallacy. How much you've invested into the project. Once the project's over, what do you do if you've invested your whole life in it? What are you going to do now? And I think that has a lot to do with it. And just I think that there is a certain, like, being a victim, and what it gives you in terms of benefits in today's society, not necessarily in the past, and certainly not for men, but or men victimized as men, but for women and for racial groups and stuff. It gives them a lot of leeway. There's a lot of sort of allowances made for victim groups in terms of bad behavior, punching up. That wonderful phrase. We're the oppressor is punching down at the helpless. The helpless punching up at the oppressor is a completely different thing. It's righteous violence. It's righteous resistance. Even who was it? Johnston, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, a feminist researcher into domestic violence. He described women's reciprocal violence as violent resistance. So even when women hit first, they're resisting the oppression of the relationship. And so it's somehow different, even when it comes out of anger or jealousy or whatever, because he chooses to describe it as violent resistance, because he chooses to describe all relationships as being male-dominated and patriarchal. So, yeah,
there's a seduction to victimhood.
There is, I think so.
Especially for women, particularly because victimhood is often seen as synonymous with femininity. And I just wanted to point something out briefly before we go on. This is this is like the perfect perpetual motion machine for women who are attracted to the fact that they can call themselves victims of inequality, because that socialization to see them as a victim means it perpetuates the very thing that they're complaining about. So they can be victims in perpetuity, because people who perceive themselves as victims do not do anything. They do not achieve anything. They do not build anything. So if you're saying, I'm a victim of not having achieved anything, not having built anything, you've essentially justified victimhood for infinity, until I guess you run out of people to victimize with your victimhood.
And if you want to look at it too, right? Like in terms of that Gloria Steinem interview I saw a few years ago, where, are women still oppressed in the West? And she said, oh, they're more oppressed than ever. Oh, how come? They're stuck balancing work and home life. They're stuck balancing careers and children and family, and they're stressed out. Many of them are the primary breadwinners now, and they need they're finding it very difficult, and all of this stuff, right? So all of these things that feminism brought about, right,
now women are victimized by
women and oppressing women, and they're more oppressed than ever by all of this. So what's the answer? More feminism.
Yeah.
With people who protest about female rights all the time, they're very intrusive about their opinions about certain things.
Oh goodness. Shall we take the quiz?
I want to take the quiz. I would be willing to give up some pay some of my salary if I had to, so that equal pay in my workplace could be a reality. Fuck no.
No.
I've always been one of the top tier employees, and I'm not fucking sharing my money with slackers. I believe that men and women should be equal.
Well, actually, Teal, dear, did you want to answer number one?
Well, it's a resounding no, because I'm a meritocrat. If I'm working for my stuff, you're not getting it. If you're working for your stuff, I'm not getting it.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Okay, I think we should go through our answer to all of them too. I believe
There is
that
there are 50 of these on the actual website though, or are we just doing
let's
these
let's just do these 9. I'm
All
not going
right.
to go do 50. I
Yeah,
believe
go
that
for
men
it.
and women should be equal. It
No.
depends on how you define equality. I mean, there's a
No.
lot of wiggle room for ideology there.
Yeah, I don't believe men and women should be equal. I don't believe anybody should be. I think that there should be equal treatment under the law. I think that there should be equal rights and responsibilities, equal access to government services, stuff like that. But I don't think men and women ever will be equal, and I think that if men and women became equal, life would be very, very fucking boring.
You know, they'd have to be hermaphrodites that lay eggs. Okay,
Yeah.
Kildare, did you want to answer that one?
Yeah, it's in what context? By all means, equality under the law, sure, but the more equally you treat people in that regard, then all you're going to do is notice larger and larger pattern discrepancies between the genders as we see in the West. And, well, then we get told that that's not equality. But we're treating all these people the same, and they're choosing different things because they can make all of the choices.
Okay, number
True.
3. I can't help but be bothered when a song includes misogynistic lyrics, even when I otherwise like the song. Oh.
Define misogynistic lyrics.
Yeah, define misogynistic lyrics.
I got all the bitches and hoes.
Good
Bitches
for
and
you.
sex every day.
Corral them up and put them on a desert island so we don't have to deal with them.
I just, honestly, I don't care. There's lots of lyrics in songs or whatever that could be construed as misandrist, misogynistic, freaking racist, all kinds of stuff. None of that really bothers me all that much. So
Yeah, well, I mean, if you consider male expendability to be misandrist, then there goes a hell of a lot of songs.
Yeah.
And I'm not really prepared to do that. Okay. Kildare.
Doesn't bother me. I mean, it's by when it comes. I imagine they're probably referring to the toxic masculinity shit and the whole like rap music treating women. I don't like that shit anyway, so I don't listen to it. So it really doesn't actually affect me. The genres of music that I do listen to don't actually really tend to reference men or women that much. So, yeah.
I would imagine they would reference deer and bucks more.
Of course, absolutely.
Okay, 4.
Dope.
I know who Bell Hooks is.
Well,
Doe
okay,
deer, a female deer, yeah.
these people probably don't really know who Bell Hooks is, because if they did, wouldn't they be
Spelling her name correctly? Yes.
in lowercase?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, we all know that the person who wrote this test doesn't know who the fuck Bell Hooks is, so let's move on to 5. 5, I can define intersectional feminism. Well, yeah, I can define it.
Yeah, it's patriarchy theory lettuce. It's a bowl of patriarchy theory lettuce with some mandarin orange slices, chopped chicken, walnuts, maybe some cashews, a little shredded frickin' crispy fucking chow mein noodles on top, right? And then they presented it to us and told us it wasn't a salad anymore.
Essentially, intersectional feminism is the way that they reconcile the fact that men are actually more victimized in certain situations, a number of situations, such as police violence, suicide, mental health, homelessness, but that women are still the victim. But women, as a gender, are still the victims because those things, when they affect men, can be excused as a function of their skin color, even though men who are white are also subject to police violence even more often than black women. They go down to their mental capacity. So if a homeless man who has a mental illness is treated worse, it's because he's both poor and has a mental illness, not because he's a man. Even though poor and mentally ill women have more services. So essentially, it's taking everything that would if it was looked at outside of the feminist lens and be realized as a male issue, it's taking it all and reducing it down to factors that are not maleness. That's what intersectionality does.
Yeah, and the only time it will acknowledge maleness is in the sense of it being sort of male privilege backfiring, and it's actually, if you trace it all the way back to the roots of the problem, it's actually based on misogyny.
Mm-hmm. That's
Because that's
intersectional
how
feminism.
patriarchy hurts men too, right?
All right, Teal Deer. You want to...
Oh God, I am going to be such a fucking hardcore feminist here. It's actually something along the lines of a system of understanding the dynamics between privilege, power, oppression, discrimination, domination. This is actually a thing. It is actually called the matrix of privilege, oppression, discrimination, domination, and something like that, of all of the multiple factors that intersect to form or compound and intersect to create the identity of an individual within society. It's something like that.
It's basically like the black, asexual, transgendered, double amputee woman, lesbian woman with multiple sclerosis, right, is more oppressed than a black woman of that same description, but who is not a double amputee.
No. It's more oppressed than a man of the same description, even though that's patently not true.
More oppressed than a man of the same description, actually more oppressed than any man of any description, I think, is really what it boils down to, because his male privilege outweighs all the other factors. So
intersectionality is essentially, it function. If you're going to talk about matrix, what's important about a matrix is what it does in the end of the day. All intersectional feminism does is ensure that victimhood stays with women. That's it. That women are defined by victims and victimhood is defined by womanhood. Because all intersectionality feminism does is say every situation of disenfranchisement, even if it's suffered worse by a man in exactly the same circumstances, that double amputee, MS, gay man who has depression or whatever else you want to add to him, who's also black, suffers more than a woman in the same situation, is not because of his masculinity, even though every other thing is held constant. It's because he's a double amputee. It's because he's black. It's because he has multiple sclerosis. It's because he's in a wheelchair. It's because he's poor. That's what intersectional feminism is. It is the complete bald-faced denial that men can ever be inflicted with something because they are men.
It's basically the progressive back thing. It uses a lot of inductive methods to look at any sort of pattern and basically apply the sort of average of what that, or sort of the apex of what each of that group is, to everyone within that group, sort of vicarious.
Well, yeah, but you sort of look. You look at how they want to explain it away with that double amputee, MS, freaking gay dude who's black in a wheelchair, whatever, asexual, transgendered, the whole bit, right? The way they'll, even if they acknowledge that he's treated more harshly by the system, they will find a way to frame it in terms of it's a side effect of male privilege. And it is a side effect of a system that's specifically set up to benefit men at women's expense. That is what it is.
Which is amazing.
Well, yeah, because in that situation, again, I'm going to don my feminist hat because I can here. In that situation, you'd say something along the lines of, the reason that this person is suffering within this society is because a patriarchal society is set up to benefit men, but it is only set up to benefit men who are of able body and sound mind, thereby marginalizing any man who doesn't meet that criteria. And that would be the explanation.
Yes, but it's all because of male privilege, right? And it's all
that's
because
sort of like saying, okay, all right, that's like saying we don't castrate men, we just castrate eunuchs. That doesn't even fucking make any goddamn sense. We just castrate eunuchs, folks. Men are doing fine.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. Maybe it was inappropriate of me to laugh like that at that, but that was just actually sort of a perfect way to say it.
That's intersectional feminism. That's the simple thing. That is intersectional feminism in a phrase, in a vibrant analogy. We don't castrate men, folks. We castrate eunuchs. Nothing to see here. Men are not being oppressed. Shall we move on to number 6?
Yes.
I don't use the phrase, hey guys, when referring to a group of people that includes men and women. Yeah, because
say-
guys is actually sort of insulting. It refers to an uncouth or an ugly man. That's what guy originally meant. So probably, but you know what? If you want to go anachronism, that's what
I say, hey, bitches.
Yeah, that's better. Everybody should say, hey, bitches. It's the feminist thing to do. All right, Kildare, go ahead.
Yeah, I tend not to. I don't know. I suppose it depends on what context. Sometimes I will, but if it's something that I'm doing, like sort of on my channel addressing people, I'll normally refer to them as just ladies and gentlemen, because I'm an oppressive shitlord who wants to reinforce the gender binary. So making
I
sure
think
patriarchy reigns supreme.
I think you know how normally I open my videos with hi everyone. I'm going to start saying hi guys now just to piss off feminists.
Mm-hmm. Okay, 7. I have taken a women's studies and/or gender studies class. Yes, and this is why I'm here now. On the other side of the looking glass.
No, I was too busy studying stuff that's actually worth studying.
And Karen?
I was too busy earning a living looking after children and renovating houses.
Okay, and you know what? I can give you the cheat sheet to every goddamn women's and gender studies class ever. Take whatever subject, concept, idea, philosophy, situation, culture, people, wooded, I don't know, great horned owl that you're talking about, and explain how it makes women victims. That's all you need. That's it. I mean, you can say, oh, the great horned owl victimizes women because ornithology, or however, the study of birds chose to focus on the horns on its head, an obvious phallic symbol, which illustrates that ornithologists are instruments of the patriarchy. There you go. That's all you have to do. Just take anything that exists and figure out how it makes women a victim.
Sounds totally legit.
Just go to the postmodernism generator on the internet and just hit the refresh button. It'll pump out a different freaking postmodernist the blah 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 hermeneutics of gender in freaking I don't know geology or some shit, and just hand that in.
Geology is patriarchy, Karen.
I know everything is.
All right, 8. I think it's important to encourage girls to pursue science and math as a career, even though those are patriarchal constructs that constrict the natural, free-flowing, orgasmic moan energies of the feminine.
I don't think. I think it's important to encourage kids to pursue careers in what they feel passionate about and what they're good at.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, 9. Women should be allowed to apply for a job if they fulfill 60% of the job's requirement. What?
Yes, you should be allowed to apply for the job. Don't be surprised when you're told you're too shit and kicked out. Because you won't be hired if you only meet 60% of the requirements.
This is oddly specific. Well, I'm not concerned about the actually what it's really specific. Is this like a new law that they're trying to bring in now?
No. I think it's addressing because there have been studies that have indicated that when there's a list of requirements for a job posting, women typically won't apply unless they fulfill all of those requirements, unless they have all or almost all of those requirements, whereas men will actually just kind of give it a shot, and if they have
they'll pad their CV a little bit and kind of make up the excess.
Yeah, they'll bluff.
Pad their CVs. They just assume, right, that I think men assume that the employer is looking for they're listing the requirements of
ideal.
the best candidate, and they're not necessarily going to. And after job hunting with my boyfriend in the field of engineering, and seeing some of the requirements that are listed on job postings that are 2-3 years old. So you have a big website that just deals with engineering jobs, and the first 3 pages are all entry-level positions, right? And they're all fairly easy to fulfill for somebody who's maybe had, a new graduate or has had a year of experience. And then there's like 25 fucking pages of employers who are demanding 10 years experience at this, 10 years experience at that. You have to be absolutely fluent in MATLAB and freaking JavaScript and all of these programming languages, and you have to have this, and you have to have that, and you have to have the other, right? And a lot of men are like, well, these job postings have been up for like a long time, right? They have not been taken down yet because they haven't found somebody, right? So I have 80% of that shit. I'm just gonna send in my application
or 60%.
and see what happens, right?
Yeah,
Because
they think maybe
if I
they can
don't
make up the difference, right?
even if I don't know MATLAB, I could learn it, right?
Well,
Even if I don't know JavaScript, I could learn it because I know Django, I know fucking other forms of
okay, can I get in here for a sec? Just because you're adding a lot of detail, but I'm not. The problem here is that men, because they have more testosterone, have a higher bar of risk. Like that they just will take more risks. All you're saying is that men will apply to a job posting if there's 60% of they don't match. They just match 60% of the requirements because they're willing to take the risk. Women aren't willing to take the risk. So what's your proposal that people who put up job requirements should reduce their requirements so that women? Well, you realize the only thing that's going to happen is that, once again, men who only fulfill the 60% of the requirements that are now listed, which were 60% of the original requirements, will also apply. And women still won't apply if they don't match the majority of the requirements. Yeah. Okay. What's the solution to that? I guess injecting women with testosterone.
Well, and one thing about the wording of this question, women should be allowed to apply for a job, right? And it's like, why? How are women not allowed to apply for any
They're totally
job
allowed.
for? Like, I'm allowed to apply for, send in my resume to some fucking engineering firm who's looking for a freaking nuclear engineer. They can feel free to bin it the moment that it comes in, right?
I move.
There's no law. They're not going to punish me.
I move to strike from all feminist rhetoric any reference that frames women as little girlies asking for a candy.
Or asking for permission.
Who's going to give you permission? No one is.
Don't need it. Fuck. What?
What? Jesus. And you people who have written this and presented it as a serious statement, and it requires that this only makes sense to people who actually see women as little girlies asking big adult men for candies. This statement doesn't make sense unless you already see women as children who have to constantly ask for men's permission. Or even just a fucking passive ad in a goddamn newspaper's permission. Oh, can I have permission to apply for this job, newspaper ad?
And it's like fucking, like, you're an adult. You're an adult. If you want to have popcorn for dinner, go ahead, right?
Yeah, have popcorn for dinner.
I used to get pie.
Wait. No, you can't do that, Karen.
I would eat it in front of my children, and they'd be like, is that your dinner? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, isn't it going to be nice when you grow up and you start paying your own rent and your own bills and you're freaking making your own decisions and can drink and give your life for your country and all that, and you can have pie for dinner too? Won't that be nice?
Oh, wait, Karen. We can't do that. According to feminism, we need to ask Teal Deer, the nearest man in the room, or Buck as it shall be, if we are allowed to eat pie for dinner or apply for a job. And this is fucking empowerment. Okay, sorry, go ahead, Teal Deer.
I give you permission to have pie for dinner so long as it contains delicious berries and I can also have a piece.
Yeah, alright, there we go. Everything is fine.
I believe I'm a feminist. I always thought guys and gals were all equal.
I'm definitely not a feminist.
I'm not against them, but I'm not like
feminism.
the president of the club.
I will probably get like a 98% because I think there's 2% wiggle room for the internal misogyny that I still hold.
I feel like you're gonna.
Oh God. Oh my God.
Does Spider Monkey Lady does anybody else just have the desire to slap her? Like, how old are you? When did you grow out of? You never grew out of being teacher's pet, did you? Never. She's trying to get like a 105 with that bonus question. Which items did you fail to answer correctly due to your internalized Saganese? Oh God, like, ugh. Anyway, all right. If they recognize the concept of internalized misogyny, how do they know that feminism isn't an expression of it?
Good question.
Indeed.
Like, judge me no matter what.
I'm excited to see because maybe I'm not as feminist as I think I am.
I would be willing to give up
Welcome
my
to the
salary
fucking
if I had
progressive
to.
left.
Do we
Jesus
have to
Christ.
go through this shit? Like, this is just them yapping about this. No, I guess we
Yeah,
do.
we can kind of skip that shit, but welcome to the fucking progressive left. Everything is always just, I can out-progressive you, I can be more tolerant than you, I'm more left than you neo-reactionary fascist Nazi shitlord. Everything is always on this, and this is just why this quiz makes me fucking laugh so hard. It's literally just like, we now want to be able to grade ourselves, so I can officially tell you that I'm more tolerant and progressive than all of you.
It's the ideological purity test, but we have no idea who wrote it. And
All right, but
what their purity level is either.
it's essentially the test to prove or to determine how much the guy on the right or the man on the right hates the woman on the left and how much the woman on the left hates herself.
I think so.
That's all this is. And it's like, again, how do you if you recognize the concept of internal misogynies, how do you know that feminism isn't a manifestation of that? Because you're creating a gender role here.
Well, it's because when you join feminism, they hook you up to this device which measures your level of internalized misogyny, and then you give feminism a shitload of money, and they enter you into the organization of feminism, and that's when you find out that your internalized misogyny is caused by the spirit of an alien that's attached itself to your soul after it was dumped into a volcano as the result of an interstellar war.
It makes more sense that way, actually.
Yeah, it does.
But equal pay in the workplace could be a reality. What? Why do I have to give up salary?
I'm definitely down to give up some portion of my pay to have some type of equality. I guess I'm
Cock-a-doodle-doo!
How much would you give up, sir? Would you give up all of it to that lovely Southern belle over there? All of it? All of your pay?
I
think that would be. I think he should. I think the government should create a contract in which he is obligated every year to give up all of his pay to that white woman, that nice white woman right there. I think that's exactly what we should go back to.
Yeah, I know. It's like he could be like, I don't know, working in the fields, and she could be sitting in the sun under a parasol and
sipping iced tea.
Oh no, or a mint julep, right? Or some sarsaparilla.
They really had to frame it this way, like nobody went through this and was like, wait a second, the black guy is volunteering to give up pay to the white woman.
I know this is like
okay. I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna go here for the sake of the joke. He's not actually giving up his money. He's giving up a little bit of his welfare for her. Ah.
That teal deer, that is worse. That is worse than Alison repeatedly saying naked ape while two black people were on the screen.
One was Hispanic, and then I also said that this woman who's white, about as white as a freaking eggshell paint on a fucking wall, he's a fucking spider monkey. She's a goddamn spider monkey.
I'm not actually giving you the gears. I just know how these people think, and so I'm essentially just leaping to their conclusions.
Yeah.
For everybody.
Yeah, let's finish this.
I can't help but bother when a song includes misogynistic lyrics, even when I otherwise like the song.
Like it's a song.
I feel like I'm not bothered. I don't know whether I'm desensitized.
You know you don't mind it.
Yes, I do. It does actually piss me off.
But you
like if
it,
my form of protest is not paying for it. And you can
That's really convenient. My form of protest is not paying for something.
Yeah, so she'll like pirate it or something and listen to it every day, but she won't pay for it or something. I don't know.
I just really wish that I knew. I might actually look it up and see if I can find who that woman is, because I would love it if there is some video of her like twerking somewhere to just some horrendous gangster rap after she said that.
That would be so awesome.
I want
Rabbits, think
to
about it.
find that. I'm gonna get my Google foo on. Feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be having a hell of a lot to talk about in the upcoming 2 minutes.
All you want, but you're not gonna get my money.
I believe it's important to encourage women to negotiate. I wish somebody would have taken me aside and taught me how to negotiate.
Here's how you do negotiation. You don't expect someone to give you something. You try to figure out something that they want, or frame something that you have as something that they want. That's how you do negotiation. The reason why you fucking fail at it is because you see the world in terms of what you're owed. Not in terms of persuading people that, yeah, you're exactly the woman for the job. Even if you don't have no math lab, you can learn it right quick, and you have these other exceptional skills. And that the person just does not want to pass up.
Yeah.
That's how you negotiate. But you don't see feminism teaches women to view the world as entitlement. So that's why they will present it and say, oh, let women, allow women to apply for jobs where they only have 60%. Who's stopping you? Because that's the shadow side of entitlement. When you feel entitled as a woman, you are implicitly saying you do not have. That you have to not appeal, you have to demand from someone else something that you feel you should have. Well, implicit in that is that you are not capable of doing that thing for yourself or getting that thing for yourself. If you have to demand from people that you be not allowed, I'm sure it's not allowed to apply, but that you win when you apply for a job, that you get a job when you only have 60% of the requirements, if you are demanding that women be in that situation, then that's not negotiation. It's an expectation that somebody else has what you want, and they should just give it to you. I lost the thread there for a second. Perhaps you can pick it up, Karen.
No, I think really it really is like the women should be taught to negotiate. How does that parse with women should be allowed to apply for jobs if they only fulfill 10% of their
How does that parse with feminist, like women are entitled because they can't, because, in brackets, they can't actually do it. Women are entitled to X because they, in brackets, can't actually. How does negotiating parse with that? Because there's an inferiority complex there. What they're saying is instead of a woman who has 60% of what she needs to get a job going to the people who are giving her the job and explaining or negotiating or illustrating how she can be an exceptional employee while only having 60%, they're saying they should drop it to 60% and just allow her to go through without a negotiation. How does that teach women to negotiate? How does feminism teach women to negotiate?
Or saying, hey, I only fulfill 60% of these requirements, but they're the most important 60%. And
on top of it, I got these other qualities.
I'm willing to work for $500 less a month than you're posting.
And
that's a negotiation.
Yeah. But the thing is that this is not. How does feminism teach women to negotiate? Have you seen how feminist women act? They don't negotiate a damn fucking thing. And this is the other thing. Negotiation requires understanding what the other person needs and respecting it. I mean, you may say how you fulfill those needs, but you need to understand them and respect them. How does feminism teach women to understand anyone else's needs and respect them?
Don't know who Bell Hooks is.
I feel like that should ring a bell.
I believe Jennifer Lawrence should earn as much as her male co-stars. I think J-Law makes more than her.
No, she should not. No, she should not. No, she should fucking not. You know why? Because she earned half as much of her male co-stars in direct pay on that movie that everybody was freaking out about. In direct pay, cash, paid, right? Half as much in options. Right, in a percentage of the profits after the movie earned out, okay? And she earned an extra $250,000 in deferred pay, which would be like a pension plan or an investment fund or something, a life insurance policy, whatever, that isn't it has cash value, but it isn't actually cash. that they didn't earn. They didn't have any deferred compensation. She did, okay? She worked less than half as many fucking days on set as either of her co-stars, male co-stars. Less than half as many fucking days. Right? Per day on set, she earned more than either of those men.
And how is this negotiation? This is the opposite of negotiation. This is entitlement. This is not understanding the opposite point of view.
Stars.
If you want to teach girls negotiation, then teach them that they have to earn men's consent or boys' consent in sex. Teach them that there's something in the behind the eyes of the men around them that is actually worth understanding and appreciating and respecting. Then that you will teach them negotiation skills, because they'll have something to negotiate for. As it is, how does feminism teach women to learn to respect people who are saying no to them? But respect why they're saying no, and say, but hey, I have some additional information to give you that may turn that no into a yes. That's a negotiation, but you have to respect why they're saying no. Where does feminism teach that? Respect for the other. Where is it in feminism?
There you go.
Oh, J-Law had an ass.
Bitch right there. I need to be more like her.
I've taken a women's and/or gender studies class.
Yep.
Have you?
I have not.
Really?
I can define intersectional feminism.
Oh my goodness,
Sorry.
really?
God, this is so fucking boring. I'm like, I'm
It's
falling
bizarre
asleep.
how
I want some
respect-
water.
Really? I mean, aren't there so many universities now where gender studies is becoming like a mandatory thing? Is that why she's asking, really, or is that just some overhyped thing that I've heard some people having jerky knees about?
Well, it's not available at every single university. Like gender studies courses are not available at every single university. So the idea that somebody could have gone through university and not taken one. Usually there's a requirement, even when you take a science degree or something, there's a requirement for, a couple of arts or humanities courses or some shit, right? Sociology or something, psychology, whatever. But yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's going to pick gender studies or women's studies. And
Well, they will if they want an easy A, because I can tell them how to get an easy A. All you do is you find anything. In fact, you find the most obscure, stupid thing and explain how women are victims of it. Easy A.
E = mc squared, a sext equation.
Oh, someone's already done that one, Karen.
I know. Apparently,
stuffed animals. How are women victims of stuffed animals?
Because stuffed animals encourage girls to see themselves as nurturers first, okay, and as warriors not at all.
Excellent. I was also going to go for the angle that it teaches girls to regard being soft and pleasant and available to be touched as an appropriate role model. So obviously stuffed animals teach objectification.
I think we should actually give all of our little girls from now on, instead of plushies to cuddle with when they go to sleep at night.
Spiky landmines.
Yeah, I think so. I think like a mace, or maybe like I don't know, a carpentry tool, or
Carpentry tool.
Yeah, maybe like a pry bar.
Too religious, I think. Carpentry tools too much like Christianity, which is the most horrible patriarchal religion, unlike Islam.
Well, but you subvert the patriarchy that way, right?
Okay,
so
I gotcha.
But
I still think you're full of internalized misogynies for not agreeing with me completely, Karen. And I'm just going to silently judge you. I'm just telling you, I'm silently judging you for being full of internalized misogyny.
I'm waiting for the silent part of that.
Nope, sorry.
I don't read enough. I should.
This one. I believe that women who possess certain types of privilege are responsible for advocating for women who don't have their level of privilege.
I do not think a movie should be released.
Oh, I think I get what she likes. If you actually go to the dark side, Miss Spider Monkey, and go to the men's rights side. You can have all of the perceived agency as you want. Because I think that's what she's groping after, is this idea that she's responsible for something. So she's going for the white woman's burden. Even though, technically, if you think about it, the white woman's like, this whole intersectionality, you have to account for your privilege and give it to them. It essentially means, it's essentially another way of saying, Hispanic, black people, we're not going to talk about Asians or Jewish people. They're irrelevant in this equation. You can't achieve without white people helping you. But that doesn't make you inferior. Actually, it really does. That's she's a bit of a racist there.
Yeah.
It's past the Bechdel test. I don't know what that is.
I do know what the Bechdel test. I mean,
he thinks the movie shouldn't be released. Didn't pass the Bechdel test. Okay, well, but the Bechdel test, Gravity, was a movie that would not have passed the Bechdel test. Sandra Bullock, stranded in orbit around the Earth, managing to pull herself out of a situation of certain death. It was the classic man against nature story, right? And it happened to be a female a strong and industrious and ingenious and freaking a woman with ingenuity feet and persistent and all of that, right? All of those things that they want to see in a female character, right? A strong, intelligent, take charge female character, and yeah, doesn't pass the Bechdel test, so shouldn't be released.
Wait, I just realized what her tattoo says on her arm. My black is beautiful. My black is beautiful.
You know what? Oh yeah. You know what movie would have been released? Mondo Lesbo Dildo Orgy Part 8.
I know what the Bechdel test is. In fact, most of us on this panel are aware of all of these things. That doesn't mean we agree with them.
Yeah,
so
the reason that we know what they are is because we hate them. Because they're terrible.
Yeah. My black is beautiful. No, I think you're more of a light mocha, really.
And I couldn't help but notice she's culturally appropriating white people with her straight hair and trying to dye it a lighter color. So clearly she doesn't actually think her black is beautiful.
That is true.
This would mean that it has more than 2 women in it, and they're talking about something outside of men.
If it's not needed.
What do you mean?
Transformers passed the Bechdel test, and you hate it because it's a misogynistic film.
Bechdel test is irrelevant, and
well, I don't know. Like I said, Orgy Part 8, Dildo Orgy Part 8. I mean, they talk about dildos, they talk about titties, they talk about pussy, they talk about how much they want to eat pussy, they talk about licking buttholes, right? They talk about and they don't talk about men because it's a lesbian orgy. Okay, let's.
Without no women.
It sounds like it has more plot than Ghostbusters, the current year edition.
Be allowed to apply for a job if they fulfill 60% of the job requirement.
I mean, dudes are.
He's like what? I can see that in his eyes. He's just like what? There's a trick here. Something's going on. I think he's a little more self-aware than the others.
Lying like 40% of it, so women should be able to do that as well.
I wish I could be as confident as like men who really don't know anything sometimes.
Well, inject yourself with testosterone, because most of that is risk aversion, being less risk averse, and also learn to negotiate. It's not confidence; it's respect for the other person's point of view. It's respect.
Well, I also think that she's awfully confident in beliefs that don't really hold a whole lot of weight. When you put them up to scrutiny, they don't really stand up. And she's pretty confident. She seems pretty confident in those beliefs. So, maybe she's just confident in the wrong things.
Negotiation. Women are completely at a loss when they're in a situation where they can't just demand something. because reasons, because morality, because they're weak, because they're victims, because blah blah blah, because ladies first. Because in negotiation, but negotiation it is about confidence. It's about believing that you bring something to the table, but it's also about believing that the person that you're negotiating with's position of not necessarily wanting what you bring to the table is a legitimate position, and you have to convince them otherwise. And you don't do that by considering it illegitimate. You do that by considering their legitimate objections and explaining how those legitimate objections are solved by what you are presenting.
You know what? You know what I found really interesting, because I read an article on it's called IO.com or something like that. It's basically a website that is there to help people hone their interview skills, and they were dealing with men and women who are applying. They were doing practice interviews, essentially, over the internet through a voice chat and a on-screen whiteboard where they would be writing code, right, for tech jobs. And they found that women consistently scored lower, right, on proficiency and interviewing and all of that. But what they did was they introduced a voice modulation system where they modulated men's and women's voices. They modulated everybody's voices to make them all sound a little bit uncanny valley, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they turned some of the men's voices into women's voices, turned some of the women's voices into men's voices, right? What they found, and this was just through their practice interviews, through this service of people practicing interviews, trying to hone their interview skills to go out and find jobs. So essentially what they found was that men were much more likely to go on to the next level of interview, to the next stage of the process, blah, blah, blah. They found that whether it was a man who was modulated to sound like a woman or a woman who was unmodulated, right, who sounded like a woman, they both tended to do not super significantly better than those who sounded like men, but better than those who sounded like men. So this was not about interviewer bias, essentially saying, well, you know, you're a woman, so I'm going to give you a lower score, or you're a woman, so you're not going on to the next round. What they did find was that the attrition rate, the rate at which people will abandon the process after one bad interview, right, or two bad interviews, was 7 times greater for women than it was for men. Men were more persistent. Men got a bad interview, they worked on it, they went back through and re-engaged the process, right? So once those first 2 bad interviews were over and done with, everything evened out. So it's a matter of trying to convince women to stick around through the 2 bad interviews where they got bad scores, right? Then everything else evens out in terms of, you know, how well they do in their interviews once, you know, once that hurdle is passed. So it's women giving up.
Let me tell you something. There is one socialization of girls that causes them to give up. And that is the socialization of girls that feminist excels at. And that is socializing girls to think that the situations that they're in are a result of other people's actions other than their own. That's what's going to create generation of girls who are just going to give up after 2 bad tries. You want to create a generation of girls that doesn't give up until they're like turned into fucking mulch and can no longer breathe? You tell them that it's within their own control.
Well,
it's life is within their own control. Their experience is within their own control. Their ability to do interviews is within their own control. Their test scores are within their own control. Everything, as much as possible, as much as reasonable, you tell them that it's within their own control to deal with. And if you don't want them to succeed, you tell them it's outside of their control. And then you'll just give generation after generation of women who just give up as soon as the going gets tough. At 7 times the rate of men. All right.
Yeah, I think that essentially it's a combination of the 2 factors, right? Like if you have a woman who's been told over and over again that the tech industry is sexist, that coding is sexist, that it's all sexist against women, right? And she gets that bad interview, her first assumption is going to be that its forces outside of her control, right? Now, that is, I think, if it's something that you can't change about yourself, the fact that you're a woman, right, then of course you're going to give up, right? But on top of that, I think that we place an expectation on men to keep trying, and we don't. Women are told that they deserve things, right? And feminism tells them this too. Women are told that they deserve things, and that if they are uncomfortable in a situation or they're upset by a situation, it is the situation that should change, not themselves, right? So men learn, right, that, okay, you had one shitty interview, improve, work on it, develop your skills, develop your rhetoric, develop your banter, whatever, develop whatever it is that you need to develop, right? Your confidence, whatever, go back and try again, improve, right? Whereas women are told by feminism that they shouldn't have to do any of that. It's the situation that should change. It's the culture that should change. It's the circumstances that should change. It's the attitudes of the institution that should change to accommodate their feelings, right? So if they're upset, they're gonna just withdraw and wait until the culture has been completely changed to accommodate their emotions.
By who? Like,
by feminism.
By feminism, but if women are withdrawing and waiting for the culture to be completely changed, who the hell is going to be doing it? Men. And once again, we focus on how men can change society and how men's actions are so powerful that they can change anything when it's patently not true. And once again, we perpetuate the same socialization for women to regard their actions as impotent. That's essentially what I'm getting at, Karen. When you teach women to be victim, you teach them to regard their actions as impotent, so they give up. And where do feminists think success comes from? It comes from failing 9,999 times and getting yourself back up at that 1,000th time and doing it again. That's where success comes from. It comes from bloody-minded perseverance, and you can either get it because everybody's saying, well, if you don't do it, you're not a real man, or you can lose it because everybody's saying, if you don't do it, it's okay, honey, it wasn't you. It's not you that's the problem, it's the world.
Yeah.
And Teal, dear, you've been quiet for so long. Have you something to bring to the table? Or
Yes, I do. If this woman would like to find out how confident she is in lying, I suggest she goes out, has a few drinks, takes home that really cute guy at the bar, and then when you wake up with a pounding headache next to a guy who's not so attractive, then you'll find out how much of a good liar you are. And how confidently you can do it.
Or
when you
how about
force him.
Or how about this? Oh, honey, don't worry about it. I'm on birth control.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Then you'll find out how much of a good liar you are.
All right,
Yeah.
let's...
I believe a woman is a woman if that is what she calls herself, regardless of her physical attributes and makeup.
Agree.
Teal dear, are you aware of someone online on YouTube called Varmint Coyote?
No. Should I be?
Oh, he's a guy with a full beard and a deep voice who doesn't wear makeup, and his one concession to femininity is a pink hoodie. I think he hangs out with Kevin Logan et al. And apparently he identifies as a woman.
Ah, of course, yes. I have met people like that, and it's really unusual when you meet them.
Well, you know what? Who cares, really? I mean, good on him. He'll get at least full citizenship that way. There's a lot of men's rights activists who've contemplated it.
Like, it's kind of like John the Other when he was throwing around the idea of becoming politically gay.
Mm-hmm.
Not actually gay, but politically gay.
Although gay men have lost their victim cred.
Yeah, no, they've lost.
They're apparently part of the oppressors now. With black men will go the same direction as will Native men.
Because my privilege and my gay privilege, my gay male privilege, and my gay male misogyny. Yeah.
Exactly. So there you go. Okay, shall we? I had a thought, but now it's dispersed.
What? Yeah, you got a higher score than me.
Yeah.
Oh, she's so fucking happy with that too.
Yeah.
Who cares, guy?
Like, I won, bitch.
But you're not that bad, though. That's not
I
bad.
still passed.
I'm an average feminist.
Wow,
Yes.
70? You love women.
I do.
I feel like
How
like
does
this-
passing?
But that doesn't mean he has to be a feminist.
Yeah, but
And also,
no,
loving
no.
women doesn't mean you have to agree with all of those statements.
You love
that-
women. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Is it women that he loves, or the citizenship card that he gets at the end of it? Oh, I'm terrible.
No. I don't even accept the premise. I mean, this is
Yeah,
just just about an ideology.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
you
the
can say
statement
this
makes
about
no
any.
sense. Yeah.
If you're a Christian and you believe that womanhood is synonymous with submission, submission and modesty or whatever else, a traditionalist Christian, and you take a test about traditionalist Christian beliefs, and you find that you get high on that score, and then you say, yes, I love women because I love what we hold them to. I love the structure that we hold them to. Feminism is just another structure that we hold women to. In feminism's case, the structure is reducing women down to a victim in every possible circumstance. And you don't love women or the people that are in women's bodies. You just love the structure that they're being held to. Feminism isn't synonymous with women any more than Christian womanhood is synonymous with women, or breaking women's feet is synonymous with women. This is. I feel like I don't know if I'm making any sense. I'm sorry.
No,
No,
you do.
It does. It does. I think the point maybe that she's trying to do is like, if you score low on this test, it proves that you don't actually love women, and that therefore you're like some sort of undercover misogynist, because the only way you can actually love women is to be like a 100% scoring feminist.
Well, it's essentially like Amy Young, right? Posited in her master's thesis at the University of Waterloo, right? That when you treat a woman better than you treat a man, that's seen as equal treatment, and when you treat a woman the same as you treat a man, that's seen as misogyny and hostile sexism, and the only thing that like tempers that response a little bit is if it's made clear to the people observing that you're treating her equally for a benevolently sexist reason, for the purpose of promoting women's equality. Then you're seen as, less sexist than the guy treating women equally, but still more sexist than the person treating women better than men, right? And I think that this woman is like, oh my God, am I a misogynist because I'm not entirely focused on women and their well-being, and I don't think
feminism. But this is
every single thing that could be done to capitulate to their needs to be
This
done.
is not. Feminism doesn't do that. Feminism idealizes a particular box that women are in. That's it. Like, if we were in an age where we defined modesty and submissiveness as femininity, people would say that adhering to Christian values is loving women. Like, Islamists, they believe that adhering to their values is loving women. Because that's the way they see women, and has nothing to do with actual respect for women as people. It has to do with respect for the construct you put women in. In this case, the respect that the construct that feminism puts women in is that every single circumstance they need to be reduced down to something that's acted upon. That's the construct. All these people are demonstrating is an awareness and respect for the construct of reducing women down to being acted upon in every single circumstance.
Well,
That isn't loving women.
That's the same construct as Islam, except for
Sorry,
that
it has nothing to do with it.
it's the same construct as Islam. It's just a matter of what measures do you take to prevent women from being acted upon.
Yeah, but it's still reducing women. Yeah, it's not loving women. It's loving the construct that you've put them in. The expectation that they be reduced down to victims, that they be reduced down to simply just being something that's written upon by the actions of men. This is the construct. This is the feminist construct, and the only thing that this frickin' test proves is that you adhere to it, or you're aware of it to some degree. Although I do find it interesting that the guy who said that feminism was, emotionally uncomfortable, it got one of the highest scores for the men. And
True.
Also, I'd like to point out that this is sort of a primitive way of inducing adherence by scoring people. This is like, what was that experiment? The Stanford prison experiment. Like, you're giving people higher scores for being more feminist. That's just a really primitive way of enforcing conformity to the beliefs by creating a hierarchy based on how close you believe it. You've created a little priesthood here.
I'm just so swayed by my own life choices, my own perspective, that I've never had to really breach that argument.
You see how this works? She's now trying to justify herself because she got a lower score. She's justifying herself why she's not closer to the sacred feminist icon because she's a lower score. She's made into a situation where she has to justify herself. Yeah, that's very empowering, isn't it? She has to start questioning and justifying her own personal choices because she got a lower score. This is like really primitive shit. Like really primitive manipulative crap. And also, if feminism's premise that men are at war with women was correct, why aren't these men jumping out with their spears and killing these enemy combatants?
You a feminist? Aren't you a feminist kind of thing?
There's some certain terms and words and tests I don't know, but given time, I think I could have a higher grade.
Voting for black.
A higher grade? Like a higher grade of meat? Or a higher grade of livestock?
A higher grade of vegetable.
It's all just setting up that same thing. It's like, no, we want to score better. Why?
Why?
Why is this score so important to you?
Because it shows that you love women, right? That's the moral imperative
for women, of course.
But it doesn't show anything of the sort. It shows how much you ascribe to a construct that reduces women down to simply being victims. Like I told you, the way you get an A in a women's studies course. How are women victims of buttons, Karen?
Oh, I know. Because okay. Men's shirts and women's shirts button on opposite sides, and the reason why they do is because apparently, historically, women used to dress men, and women had to dress themselves, and so essentially, it's a patriarchal construct based on the subservience of women.
Brilliant. This is the construct that feminism has. Reduce women down to victims of everything and anything. Reducing women down to victims of everything and anything strips them of their ability to deal with failure, which strips them of their ability to actually succeed. Feminism is a construct that not just reduces women down to victims in every conceivable circumstance, but teaches them how to remain victims of every conceivable circumstance. That is the construct that you say loves women. Well, I disagree in very, very, very strong terms. So the whole fucking premise of this is shit. It's all shit. Freaking naked apes, you're stupid. And you, the spider monkey. All right.
And then women rights and all that. All those things intertwined. Because you know how it feels to be marginalized.
My relationship with the word feminism has always been...
Because you know how it feels to be okay, I guess he's like, okay, as a black man, I know how it feels to be marginalized. I'm sure he does, as a black man. Know how it feels to be marginalized.
Knows as a man how it feels to be marginalized.
Yeah.
Right now... This is a freaking ideology that bases all its moral proborum on how women are treated. That's it. Like, I mean, yes, it reduces women down to victims, but on the other side of the coin, it reduces men down to villains and decides that society should be completely judged by the quote-unquote benefit of women.
Yeah, well, men are either villains or heroes.
Yeah. Teal dear, you've been quiet, so...
No, I got nothing. I'm waiting to see what
transpires.
Yeah.
But you were right, or somebody was right. I guess they transpire to make that guy become a feminist because now he can feel proud of his higher score, or something.
kind of tense because I'm a black woman and a lot of what feminism mainly gets at is white women's issues. But at the end of the day, I think that it's important for us
Hold
to
it at the beginning. White feminism isn't good enough for you, is it?
I would say to her that's the point. It always was the point. White feminists were always feminism. And of
Well,
course,
I mean,
white feminism isn't going to be good enough for you. It's because it's exploitative. Anyway, sorry.
the problem is that feminism has always been extremely preoccupied with middle and upper middle class women and wealthy women. I mean, okay, so there's more. Look at the amount of coverage that you get in the media about women on corporate boards, women politicians, women in politics. You know, how many women we have in the Senate, how many women we have in Congress, how many women we have in Parliament, how many women we have in cabinet, right, and all of those things. Women on corporate boards, women CEOs, women in STEM, women in elite positions, women blah blah blah, right? And why we need parity there. We need parity there, right? Now, they don't care about the women at the fucking Tim Hortons, right? Because the women at the Tim Hortons are making basic minimum wage, just like the men at the Tim Hortons, right? And they get their quarterly freaking performance review if they last that long, and they get their 15-cent raise every 3 months, right? And that's what they get, and that's how it goes. And they are the ones who are more likely to be in, or a woman who looks like this is more likely to be in that position, right, than complaining because she didn't get promoted to the C-suite, you know, and a man got, or she didn't make partner at the law firm, right? So when you look at how much talk there is in media, in mainstream media, about different women's issues, right, and the issues completely ignore the reality. Feminism solutions completely ignore the reality of low-paid working-class women who not only would be better off if they didn't have to work, okay, if they were in a stable relationship where there was one breadwinner and one person looking after the home and the children, or working part-time, right, they would be better off, right? And on top of that, they would rather be doing that. They would rather, anybody who's worked a shitty menial job would rather be at home with their kids if they could manage it financially, right? Anybody. And there's no feminism out there that is doing anything other than saying, well, we need to provide affordable universal daycare for these women so that they can continue to go to their shit fucking menial jobs.
Well, let me just put it really succinctly. What problem that the black community is facing right now hasn't been created or exacerbated by feminism? You answer that question. And you like to blame white society when it's the concepts of feminism and a lot of liberalism that have caused a lot of the issues. Even affirmative action is actually secretly credibly racist. And I'm not even saying that it discriminates against white people. It discriminates against the black people and the other minorities that it supposedly is helping. Because they're not putting you in positions where you're going to be able to advance your families or your communities. They're putting you in the positions that they used to put athletes in. And they put athletes in those positions because they knew that if they didn't get the high grades, they'd have something to fall back on. The positions that they're putting minorities in these prestigious colleges, are the washout positions. The positions that they had to fill with people who might have something else to fall back on, but now they can fill them with minorities because who gives a shit, right? Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit if you draw your smartest away from colleges where they would have been the top of their class and ended up getting decent careers and then probably gotten their children into those higher education spheres? Who gives a shit if you actually just shoot them in the foot or shoot them in the kneecap? Because it's just a bunch of black people washing out, right? That's what these so-called liberals have done to the black community. And you know what? I don't want to get into this rant because it's going to open up a huge wellspring Get your fuck out of your this isn't your issue that you talk about, Alison, so shut the fuck up.
And it's a massive can of worms too. The argument that sending people to freaking Princeton or Duke or Stanford with lower entry scores just ends up they end up washing out more often than students with higher scores.
Even graduating is washing out if you're in the lower one half.
Yeah, so I mean it's essentially sacrificing them on the altar of feeling like you're doing the right thing.
Oh, it's a sacrificing the altar of white virtue signaling and feeling like, oh yeah, we're abiding by our white burden because nobody can succeed unless white people make it succeed for them. And if the black people who had a legitimate position in the top tier of a so-called lower class school actually went there, their children would probably have a very, very, very good chance of getting into a higher tier school absolutely legitimately. It's how the Asians did it. I'm just saying.
There you go.
All right.
Together, if the goal is equality for everyone, then it's like I need to be a part of that conversation as well and advocating for what I need as a black woman alongside with white women.
So you're going to tell women on your
There is no difference between what anyone needs.
That's
Stop
true.
playing the race card. It's an irrelevancy.
Well, I'm going to play the race card here, though. White women will always win that war. You're just going to be used. All the intersectionality does is take all of the problems associated with being black, which are mostly caused by feminism and liberalism at this point in time, all of those problems, and appends it to white women so they can use it as a moral bludgeon against white men to great effect for white women. Not so good effect for you, because considering that the cost for you is a completely fractured community. But, that's the usual cost when a colonial power goes in and says, yeah, I like that resource over there, it's mine now, which white women have done for your victimhood. And they've done it via intersectional feminism. Anyway, I know that this might be contentious. If you have any, like, Teal Deer, feel free to argue my points if you feel like it.
No, I mean, that's pretty much how I see it as well. Feminism is very good at absorbing other ideas and just kind of saying, yeah, this affects women as well, and it's I suppose not by the fact that a lot of these other movements seek to kind of absorb themselves into feminism because the women need help narrative is so very strong that it's kind of their way of doing it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of just creates that perfect storm where it's no, anyone who feels in any way oppressed, just kind of come over here and we will use you because we can. You're another pawn that we can put forward and say that we're fighting for.
Yeah, you know what I want to say to her shirt? Feminism, the radical notion that women are people. Feminism, the notion that women are people is radical. Or, because it's not. Nobody thinks that, lady. The only people I think that women aren't people are people who idolize and constantly idolize women's bodies, feminists, and constantly reduce women down to being victims. Because that really destroys women's personhood. But, that's an argument for another day. Sorry, Karen, go ahead.
Anti-feminism, the radical notion that women are adults. That's pretty much. No, when you look at feminism taking ownership of a lot of these issues, and then it manages to, it's a way of expanding their power and expanding their scope and expanding and making themselves less able to be criticized because how dare you say we're this, that, or the other when we're fighting for gay people's rights or when we're fighting for black people's rights or when we're fighting for this, that, and the other, right? And the better treatment of disabled people and all of this stuff, right? So it's essentially if they can pull all of these groups under their rubric, they essentially, it's like one gigantic cobbled together Kevlar vest for feminism. So yeah.
To be honest, it's neo-colonialism. And,
Oh yeah.
and it's really ironic. And I think something occurred to me today about why black men sort of buy into this. It allows black men to blame their victimhood on their blackness rather than the combination, the 1-2 punch of black plus male. Because the real reason why black men are killed more often, or engage in are the higher level of criminality, etc., and are seen as more aggressive and subject to discrimination in terms of sentencing, which is all statistical stuff. The reason why is because they're black and male, and that is like a force multiplier on being seen as toxically masculine. Black men have a force multiplier on being seen as toxically masculine and thus discriminated against due to that quote-unquote toxic masculinity by society, because they're seen as too masculine. And the other thing is that they're being treated as disposable by their communities, which creates the increased criminality. So it all comes back to actually discrimination against being male. But that would mean recognizing that you are a victim because you are a man, which is something that men really have a problem with, that I've noticed. They would rather embrace feminism to avoid being seen as a victim because they're a man. Or in the case of black men, they would rather embrace the idea that their victimhood comes from their blackness rather than a combination of their blackness and their maleness, rather than being seen as a victim. Because for men, it's a challenge to recognize being a victim as a man. So I can see why feminism would be appealing to black men. And
it's like
to a certain
when I was on that episode of The Agenda with Steve Paikin, Desmond Cole, who writes for a Toronto magazine, I forget what it's called, maybe The Toronto or something like that, he was talking about being followed around in stores and things like that. And I told him, I said, you look at stop and frisk policies, you look at driving while black, none of that is about being black so much as it is about being male. Like they target blacks more often, right? But they overwhelmingly, right, 98% or something like that of stop and frisk, targets are male. And so there is no such thing as driving while black. It's driving while black and male. And his comeback was like, oh, well, would it happen to my mother? Would it happen to my sister? Well, of course not. I acknowledge that. But I still think that women have it worse.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something critical, I think, at the risk of offending everyone. It's something critical to the male ego to refuse to see where you're a victim because you're a man. And I think black guys have that as much as any other guy. So
I think it's critical to their ego for a reason, because the moment that you say you're a victim because you're a man, everybody just cuts you loose.
Or the moment you recognize it. It may be critical for a reason, but at this point in time, it's also maintaining this particular structure. But anyway, so I can see how that would be appealing to him, to just put the blame on just blackness, even though his sister, his mother, his wife would not face the same thing. And I think the real reason why there is this racism, or this is, like I was saying, black is a force multiplier for being seen as masculine. He's seen as a black man as hypermasculine, as toxic masculine by society, and is discriminated because of that. He's seen as more dangerous because of that. Black women are seen as less attractive because of that, because white women are seen as more feminine. And then you got Asian men and women who almost, in some ways, get an advantage because they are seen as more feminine. I'm just putting it out there.
More neotness.
More neotness. And just putting it out there that maybe it's not even driving while black. It's driving while being seen as toxic, as having hypermasculinity.
Yeah.
Okay. Teal, there, you want to get in on that?
No, that stuff's all been gone over dozens of times, so let's go.
Yeah.
Onward and upwards.
You're 70% feminist?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yo,
for fuck's sake.
girl. Yo, girl. I'm
Just-
70% feminist.
Just to let you know, I'm 70% feminist.
Oh.
I would say I'm listening.
No, you wouldn't. You. Oh my God.
Well,
Lack of self-awareness.
he was pretty cute, you know.
This is true.
She's like, I'm listening because you're pretty cute and you're 70% feminist, and that might mean you might do a little spanky in the bedroom, unlike the feminist men. So I don't know. Except for Gomeshi, apparently. So.
Oh Jesus, Gomeshi is like, you would never expect it, but apparently he's.
Oh no. There's a lot of feminist men out there who
want to choke a bitch. I guess I wouldn't be surprised by that.
Yeah, no, you shouldn't be surprised by it. I think that there's a variety of reasons why men are attracted to feminism, and for dominant males who really have issues around, male dominance and female submission and all of that, especially in a sexual context, or opportunistic predators. It offers them a pool of women who, and frankly, just going, and I'm only going by anecdotal evidence, and this may only be the case over the last 15, 20 years, that there's been serious indoctrination of what I would call hyper-feminine women in academia, in women's studies classes. So people like Steph Guthrie and all of that, who are like, oh, women are victims, I'm scared, and I'm blah, 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 right? There are a lot of feminist women out there who, it's not necessarily that they're more interested in being smacked around in bed, that it turns them on more than it does other women who are not feminist, but they have more internal conflict over it. So I think maybe some of them, some of the men who are involved in feminism are there for opportunistic reasons, at least at sort of the root of it. They're attracted to submissive women. They're attracted to women who are meek and who
are attracted to believing that there's some sort of ideology that they can just, say, I'm a feminist. That makes me empowered and independent because I can't do it on my own.
Mm-hmm. And so essentially, and also, like, honestly, I've said it before, if I was a rapist, who would I want to hang out with? I would want to hang out with a whole bunch of people who were not only, number one, obsessed with rape and can't stop talking about it, right? So I could just wank to that every night. But also who are like, women shouldn't be expected to protect themselves. Women shouldn't be expected to take measures to avoid risk. Women shouldn't be expected to not drink themselves into oblivion. Women should be allowed to just do whatever they want and wear whatever they want and blah, 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 right? You hang around with people like that, you're maybe going to be more likely to find women who've made themselves vulnerable, right? I mean, Kyle Payne was a male feminist who years ago he did the circuit, doing the sort of the introductory seminars, the orientation seminars, the She Fears You seminars, the consent freaking classes and things like that, right, at universities, and he was convicted of fucking fingering a co-ed who was passed out and taking pictures of it.
For fuck, what?
Yeah.
This guy said she fears you, and he.
Yeah.
Oh God, maybe they should just fear you.
Yeah, no, it was like, and there wasn't a whole lot of talk in the feminist community about that. There was some really, really negative things said about Hugo Schweitzer, but that blew over really quick. Hugo Schweitzer was a guy who banged some woman, probably got her knocked up, and then she passed the kid off as some other guys because, and married that guy, and he had an ex-girlfriend. They used to like be completely drug-addled freaking drug fiends together, and he showed up at her place and had sex with her, and they got really high together, and then he freaking turned the gas on, right? And after she passed out and was gonna like do a dual suicide, despite the fact that she really didn't seem to have any intention of committing suicide, but he figured he'd end both their misery, and and slept with some of his students, taught women's studies at some community college or down in California, San Diego or something like that, and admitted to sleeping with his female students, admitted to all kinds of really, really egregious. But what made him attractive to a lot of the feminist movement was his ability to say, oh, none of that was me, all of that was masculinity and what the world has taught me to become as a man.
No,
right?
it was you.
Yeah, I know, it was him. He was a fucking complete freak show, right? So, I mean, like, you look at some of the appeal of feminism has also got, for some men, has also got to be in this externalizing of their own bad behavior, their own negative attitudes. Like when you are a piece of shit and you know it, right? And you have this ideology that's there to tell you, well, that's not really you, that's toxic masculinity. That's just what the culture has taught you how to be, right? And it's not your fault because the culture made you be this way, right? That's got to be really, really attractive too.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, I think, attractive because there was one comment I accidentally put up. So, guys, if you wanted to know where the Future of Men's Rights, my own personal commentary, that accidentally went up on the Honey Badger radio channel. I accidentally uploaded the draft to my channel, and then in between uploading that draft and uploading the other video, the YouTube's decided to switch me to the Honey Badger's radio channel, and I didn't notice. And I didn't notice until it had gone public and a couple hundred people had seen it, and I was like, oh, fuck. And so I never really intended that to be on the Honey Badger radio channel, but then I just edited it and let it stay, because I figured you guys would be more confused if I took it down again. But regardless, there was a comment on there saying that, recognizing that men are victims in the society, which to me seems patently fucking obvious. I know it's not a very comfortable thing for a lot of guys to think about, but it seems like it's pretty obvious, to me at least. Women, the comment said that as a man, I would rather be whipped than be seen as a victim. I would rather be whipped by you, Alison, than have you see me as a victim. Well, unfortunately, you don't get a choice there. What has been seen cannot be unseen. I think the only thing we can do is just move forward with the knowledge that we have. But that really stuck with me, because what is feminism but men choosing to be whipped rather than be seen as victims? And it's just bizarre. And it's like, well, if feminism is something that actually appeals more to men than the recognition of their vulnerabilities, the recognition of the possibility that they're victims because they're men, where do we go with that? You tell me. Like, okay, do you want us to just shut up so you can continue to be whipped instead of having the fact that you can be a victim because you're a man recognized? Oh. Hilder? You seem to have gotten quiet. You retreated into the...
I'm just. Oh my God, dog. Honestly, I don't know how to. I mean, because it really is a sort of it's a circular problem, right? That men.
I have to say, yeah, it is a circular problem. Because if we're fighting against, okay, fair enough, we might be fighting against women, but it's going to be even harder to fight against men if this is what they want. It's like, what do you do? Okay, you would rather be whipped. Okay, well, feminists are doing that.
I mean, look at it this way. I would rather be whipped than be thought of as a victim. But the mere act of being whipped for no reason makes you a victim.
So I'd rather be a victim than thought of as a victim and saved from being a victim. it's like, okay, yes, yeah, all right, please deal with that. I'm probably not going to quit because you would rather be whipped by feminists than be seen as a victim by female men's rights activists. I'm not going to quit. It's a little disheartening. I think that we can still move forward, though, because,
Yeah.
you know, if you recognize that you're a victim, you can stop being one. It's possible.
Yeah, and you know, honestly, I think that some of the things that you and I were discussing earlier today, that I will be expanding on in. I'm going to be in Ottawa in September on the 17th for a one-day conference put on by Cafe Ottawa with the wonderful Dr. Janice Fiamengo and the wonderful David Shackleton and many other speakers. There will be several speakers and a panel discussion and the whole bit. So I will be discussing a lot of these sort of issues, the barriers that are involved in effective men's issues advocacy. And, you know, one of the barriers is essentially men's unwillingness to view themselves in, or allow others to view them in that way. And that unwillingness may be there for perfectly valid reasons. And yet I don't believe that men admitting their vulnerabilities, men accepting that they can be victims, is ever going to have the emotional power that it has when women do it. I don't think that it ever will, right? But maybe we can find some compromises and some solutions that will help to, I don't know, work around this circular problem.
Well, I mean, having uploaded that video erroneously to the Honey Badger radio channel, there was actually some good stuff that came of it, because there was a lot of criticism. Essentially, there's a video that concluded with my push towards having a space, essentially a studio space, to support artists who are interested in bringing attention to men's issues and the attendant stuff that we talk about. And there was some pushback against that. Some people were like, well, why are you doing this? Why are you, and the thing is that I'm glad for the pushback, because it really made me think about why. And I've been thinking about why, but it coalesced a bunch of threads in my mind that I think was really important. And it made me say or realize something. Like, and Karen, you can chime in when I talk about this as well, because I think that we had a really productive conversation. When somebody says, why don't you create a men's domestic violence shelter, for example, I think that they're mostly employing that as a way to shame the legitimacy of what we are doing, which is creating a community of artists, a community of content creators, and trying to support them in bringing attention to these issues, whether or not they identify as men's rights advocates or activists, or they identify as anti-feminists, but giving them the resources they need to bring attention to these issues and make these arguments and try to push back against what is the common thread of our society. And it made me realize that when we talk about a domestic violence shelter for men, we're talking about something that I don't even know will ever be possible. And here's why. And I don't mean to be so freaking negative and disappointing, because this will end on maybe something that's a little bit more uplifting. But hassles of victimized men do not, they don't offer a return for anyone. You can look at the brothels of female victimhood, and they offer a return. These domestic violence shelters, which essentially function as brothels for female victims, they offer a return, and the return they offer is what I call emotional imperium. It's like the will and the right to rule. And the reason why they do that is because they justify government interventions on their behalf. They justify money spent on their behalf by governments and corporations. So these women, these brothels of female victimhood, can be used by governments and corporations to justify themselves morally. We have to do it to save the women. So there is a return, even though they're pumping in. And I did some thinking about how much you would have to spend to be able to sustain, for example, a male domestic violence shelter. I mean, you literally would have to be able to throw away dozens of people's salaries every month. Like, you think about that. That would be a couple $100,000 a month just to maintain one shelter, and to maintain and service the needs for the men of a country as big as Canada, which is like 1/10 the size of the U.S. You would be looking at billions of dollars, because for each shelter you would be looking at tens of millions. You need one in most of the major centers, and you're starting to move into billions of dollars a year. So you would have to find the one corporation or convince government to pour billions of dollars into something that will give them no return. And if we're talking about a corporate investment, that corporation has to invest in something that not only will give them no return, but may actually make them look worse morally, because they're helping demands and nobody cares, or it's part of patriarchy or whatever thing. And in terms of appealing to government, you would have to convince them to do away with one of the things that gives them their justification, which is this idea that women are victims because they're victims. That's what gives them a lot of their justification for taking money, for taking resources, for taking people's rights in order to protect the women. So you'd essentially be asking the corporation, who might see an exodus of their shareholders and their support by taking on this project of pouring billions into something with no return at all, which is helping men the way we help women, and you'd be asking the corporations and governments to cut their own throats in order to justify and to do it based on what is right, and what is right and just and rational. And those are wonderful things, but what kind of argument, what kind of rational argument can you make to convince someone to slit their own throat? Because that's the argument here. And it made me really think about what I'm trying to accomplish, what we're trying to accomplish at Honey Badger Radio. And what to articulate it is this. Right now, Honey Badger Radio supports, two men financially. Gives them a living wage. And in return, they're a force multiplier for bringing out the message. Brian has made it so that we can increase our content immeasurably. And it actually, that in becoming a force multiplier for creating content, Brian has created his own additional jobs for 2 additional men, Axion and Aaron, to organize and reduce that content to more manageable bits. So in some ways, we are creating a shelter for men. But the way we're going about it is that we're creating a support system for men at the same time as we're asking for a return. But that is something that I think is almost integral to supporting men. I don't know, even if we were able to find that unicorn corporation that would pour billions into something they're going to get nothing back from and potentially could cause them to lose shareholders and lose money, even if we find that unicorn corporation, men may not want to actually have money poured into them just because they're victims.
Yeah.
It may be it may be that supporting men in giving back, in working to build something, is an aspect of supporting them in healing. So it was really interesting, all of these concepts and things that I talked about, or I thought about. So thank you for all the criticisms, and it was good.
Yeah, I'm not going to go so far as to thank that idiot for the criticisms that, we're a bunch of scam artists and everything. I mean, there are people here contributing to Honey Badger Radio in terms of, hours a day, right? Essentially full-time job, that are getting paid as full-time employees, right? They're not getting paid the way the director of a battered women's shelter is paid in my province, which is over $100,000 a year, right? They're getting paid essentially minimum wage to be able to essentially contribute more than 8 hours a day, in many cases 5 to 7 days a week, right, towards this project, right? That's what they're getting paid for. That's what the money that goes to Honey Badger Radio is paying for. It's also paying for equipment. It's paying for all kinds of other stuff, right? So and it's paying for the content, right? And when I look at, like, because I make money from my channel, right? I don't take any money from Honey Badger Radio other than when we collaborate on a fundraiser or something like that for a trip. And I make money from my channel. I would make more waiting tables part-time, right? The reason why I'm able to not wait tables part-time is because I have the money from that, I have the money from a couple of other sources, and I also have a significant other who is willing to take on the lion's share of the family's expenses because he wants to support my work, right? That is why I am able to do this. And when you have somebody like Happy Drumstick 93, who, as far as I can tell, deleted his own comment, and therefore the entire thread was deleted, saying that when somebody said, well, hey, if you're in the UK, you know, why Justice for Men and Boys is asking for 20 people to run for office under, you know, as members of that party. And he's like, oh, I would never give up my anonymity, you know. And then I go and I look at his channel, and it says this channel has no content. And all he can do is bitch and moan about the fact that somehow we're a bunch of con artists profiting off of desperate men and putting that money in our back pockets. Because, you know, I'm paying for trips to Bermuda and, like, freaking... I'm freaking going on cruises and shit with this money. Yeah, no, I'm not. Not Alison is not. Mike is not. Brian is not. None of us are getting rich off of this, right? And for some asshole, and we're all doing all of this under our real names, right? You know, why would you never give up your anonymity, Mr. Happy fucking Drumstick? Brave freaking MRA. Yes, you brave men's rights warrior, right? Why would you never give up your anonymity? Why? Because it would make you unemployable, right? Alison's made herself potentially unemployable. So have I. So has Brian. So has Mike. So have a lot of us, right? And now you're saying, oh, well, you know, and we did it because that's the only way you gain any fucking credibility in the mainstream, is if you're willing to put your face and your name out there, right? Because the moment you say, oh, I'm not going to reveal my name, and oh, I'm not going to reveal my face, right? You know what you're saying? Don't take me seriously. I know what I'm saying is wrong. I know what I'm saying is problematic, right? That's what they're going to interpret that as. The very first fucking time I gave my real name was long before I put it in my fucking byline. I gave it to a local news station in Bozeman, Montana, when I went down there to give a presentation, and we had one local news reporter cover it, and she gave me two choices, right? The choice was, you either give me permission to reveal your name, and the story will go out, or you do not give me that permission, and I cannot guarantee you that the story will be on the evening news. And I gave her my fucking name, right? That was a year, maybe a year and a half before I put my name in my byline, before I decided I wanted to come out under my real name. I gave it to the fucking news so that the story would go out, people would see it, people would take it seriously, right? Because that's what you fucking have to do. You can't go on the fucking... You're not going to be interviewed by fucking BBC as Happy Drumstick 93, you fuck. And for an asshole with no content on his channel, right? You're anonymous. Oh, I value my anonymity. You can't even fucking put up videos. You can't even do shit. All you can do is bitch about the people who've made themselves potentially unemployable for the rest of their lives doing the shit that you will not do. You won't run for office. You won't found an organization. You won't fucking volunteer for Mankind UK. Please donate them money, anybody who's listening, right? You won't fucking do any of that because you value your anonymity. Yeah, well, you know what? You can fucking lick my butthole, right? And you can take every fucking criticism about me taking the equivalent of $8 an hour and putting it in my pocket for the amount of time that I put into this endeavor. You can take all of that criticism and you can shove it right up your ass. Bend over so I can file your suggestions exactly where they fucking belong.
Sorry. Well, I mean, to be honest, I did find it. Even though I don't agree with a lot of his suggestions, obviously I don't agree with his cheat. When he wrote that, I was actually pretty upset. Not at him. I was just frustrated. And I said to him, you know, if you've got a better idea, tell me. Tell me what to do. Because as far as I can tell, I have looked at the situation from every single angle, and this is it. This is the angle that has a modicum of a possibility of success. This angle, which is to say the slow and steady creation of a media platform, the slow and steady creation of a community of artists and storytellers who can bring attention to these issues. And not just that, but this slow and steady creation is actually helping real life men. Not even in a real and tangible and financial sense. If I wasn't giving Ed and Brian money each month, they wouldn't be supported each month. I mean, they're both industrious. They would get jobs probably instantly. So, I mean, I'm not dealing with a charity case, and not in the slightest. But men don't want to be charity cases. It almost seems like being able to give back to who's supporting them is like an essential part of supporting men. And I don't want to take... Anyway, I understand your fervor, Karen, because he was a bit of an obnoxious cunt.
I'm really fucking pissed off at this guy because, you know, like, and the fact that he deleted his comment, which I think he did, I'm pretty sure he did. I'll have to go back and look. But it was not there when I went back, when I refreshed the page, and the entire thread was gone. But, you know, like, for somebody who is accusing us of being con artists, and you know, the amount of fucking time and effort that I put into this, right? Like, my son is waiting for a ride to his friend's house for a sleepover. We should have left half an hour ago, right? And, you know, this is what I do. And you know what? You know what I could be doing right now? I could be waiting tables and not fucking doing this, right? If I didn't have some kind of compensation for this, what would I be doing, right?
Okay,
and how
some people are saying, you know, like, Teal Deer is anonymous, but Teal Deer isn't bitching us out about, you know, being funded by the work that we're doing in this issue.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, I mean, yes, some people need to be anonymous because they have issues in their own lives that take preeminence over fighting this battle. But
some of us actually have real life jobs and careers, some of which we've been building up over a number of years, frankly. So, you know, in those environments, you know, like how people were threatening, like, Thunderfoot's employers, you know, and he's one of those people who has a career that's come up over 20-something years. Some of us are in similar positions, but with less understanding employers, or potentially less understanding employers. So
Agreed, absolutely. But for somebody who says, you know, this is my advice, right? And he left a comment essentially saying, this is my advice. And he listed a bunch of shit, none of which he's doing, right? None of which he himself is doing, right? But his advice...
All of which many of us have done and have failed. Like, we've watched it fail, or we've done it and it's failed.
Like, and to freaking say, oh, why aren't they opening a men's shelter or whatever? Like, you know, do you understand what that has he actually looked into what that entails, right? Because you know who did look into it and who did do it? Earl Silverman died by his own hand, completely fucking penniless, after spending 6 years trying to get a human rights fucking hearing and being denied over and over and over again. You know why? Because it's women who are oppressed, and men don't need the services. And men don't even need a fucking hearing before a government body to determine if they do need the services, right? So, you know, you can fucking, again, lick my fucking butthole, and then you can bend over and I will file your advice exactly where it belongs, because, you know, I can do a lot more with my channel, right, and with my voice if I have the time to use it, right, which means that, I don't know, my bills need to be paid and I can't be living in a fucking cardboard box, right? I can do a lot more with that than I can trying to open up a fucking battered men's shelter and trying to get funding from a government that will not listen, will give me the runaround, that has every right to deny me any funding whatsoever, because our Charter of Rights and Freedoms has a loophole built into it that says, oh, well, you know, even though we're not allowed to discriminate on the basis of sex, we're allowed to discriminate on the basis of sex in cases like this, right? And we don't even have to give you a hearing that would allow you to argue your case, because we're allowed to discriminate on that basis as well, right? So,
What? I was expecting a conclusion there.
so I'm like, what the fuck does he want us to do? Right?
Well, that's what I said. I asked him, give me like, seriously, you think I'm building this just for shits and giggles? Do you think I'm like just building this because, oh yeah, I can make a pretty penny off of men's rights? Are you really shitting me? Are you really shitting? No. If you have a better goddamn idea of how to go about doing this, I am at your disposal. All of my resources are at your disposal. But telling me to quit is not a better idea. Telling me that to quit because I'm a fucking scammer? What? Well, just give me a better idea. You think I'm using this money wrongly? Tell me how to use it rightly. Tell me,
Well,
for fuck's sake.
How can you be a scammer? How can you be a scammer if you're telling people, here's what I want you to donate to, here's what I'm going to use the money for, and then you use the money for that? How is that scamming anybody, right? Like, I don't, like, that's not the definition.
That actually occurred to me. It's like,
if I set up a Fund Anything campaign and I say, you know, I feel like I want to go on a cruise to the Caribbean, right? And I want people who like me to fund that cruise, right? And then I use the money to spend it on something frivolous like that cruise. How am I scamming anybody?
yeah, I mean, that's true. Anita needed to scam people because she said, I'm going to create a feminist whatchamazigget. I'm going to create a feminist series of... She scammed people because she didn't fucking create it.
Yeah.
It's like, when have we lied and said, no, actually, we said we're going to solve all of the world's problems, but what we're really going to do is talk about men's rights on YouTube and any other platform that we can claw our way into. When? Okay,
Look,
all right, this has gone on long enough. We gotta, I mean...
Now I've given myself an aneurysm, too, and that's
Yeah,
probably...
but you didn't really bitch. You didn't really get into a full-fledged rant during the actual Zerker, so hopefully
Yeah,
this
well-
will satiate people.
Yeah, well, I
Teal deer.
had some words, so...
Yeah, you had some words. You definitely had some words. Teal deer, you're the buck of the hour. Did you wanna run us out?
Well, I'm very happy that I have now been informed about the honey badger business model. So, thanks.
Is that good or bad?
Well, I didn't really know that much about it before. I now feel a lot more informed.
Oh well, I mean,
I'm putting a positive spin on this.
Okay. Well, you can lick my butthole later and bend over and all of that. That's part of our business model.
Excellent.
Okay,
All right.
well, I mean, this wasn't really. I didn't realize you wanted to know. Otherwise, I would have done a much more.
No, I
intelligible
actually don't care.
presentation.
I'm joking, and I'm making it funny because you've just spent half an hour giving someone who sounds like a troll exactly what they wanted.
Oh,
yeah, that's true.
It's really, you know, this isn't necessarily a troll thing, right? I mean, there are actually people who not being trollish, not being some David Futrell clone or minion or David Futrell himself under a, you know, brand new YouTube account, called Happy Drumstick 93, essentially trolling us. There have been people saying, well, why don't you just do this? Well, why don't you just do that? Well, why don't you just do, as if nobody's thought of that before. As if nobody thought about asking the government to fund a men's domestic violence shelter. Nobody's ever thought of that before. It's not like in the UK there was a charity that got something like £43,000 a year, oh my goodness, for the entirety of London to deal with male victims of sexual violence, and then had their funding slashed to zero in a year where complaints increased by 50%, right? It's not as if that's ever happened. It's not as if we're up against barriers. It's like they don't realize the scope of the problem. They don't realize what we're up against, and they will ask, well, why don't you just start a domestic violence shelter? Well, it's not that fucking easy. It's just not. Not for this.
Well, it's basically, I think, starting a domestic violence shelter in the model of the female domestic violence shelter is probably impossible for men. You would literally have to ask, particularly on the scale that the domestic violence shelters are for women. I mean, a local one will suck in probably maybe tens of millions, including like all the insurance you'd need. But to cover something, just a country like Canada, which is not a big country, you're going to look at the billions. And nobody's getting a return off of it. And not only is nobody going to get a return off of those billions, which they do when it comes to women's domestic violence shelters, even though that return is disturbing and fucked up, it's still a return. Not only that, but they risk losing all of their income in the effort of it, because people will run away from men's rights until we make it not a bad term. And you know what? Let's get this over with, because Teal here is probably chomping at the bit, or the cud, or whatever deers chomp at, to have this be over. I sense.
Sleep is a very good thing, and I have been missing it for the last, hour.
Yeah, it's not like you're not going to come on again at some point.
Precisely.
Yeah, so let's say good night to everyone. Good night to the deers. Good night to the bears. Good night to the badgers. And, yeah.
To the pandas. And
to the pandas.